Hey everyone, I'm your host, Kyle Dickinson, your favorite senior security solution architect that focuses on threat detection, incident response, and today, something a little different, penetration testing, which is awesome. I am joined by my long lost brother, Knox. Knox, go and introduce yourself.
How's it going? Yeah, I'm Josh Knox. I work for Horizon3.ai. Used to be a crazy federal contractor doing security in Kubernetes. And before that, I was a high school teacher like 10 years ago.
Awesome.
Yeah, big change.
Yeah. Yeah, big change from high school teacher to professional penetration tester developer, and basically building something that is going to take over our world. No, I'm just kidding. That's not going to take over our world. It might, who knows? And so when we're thinking about Horizon 3 and what you're doing with penetration testing, you're bringing in a new aspect of it. For those that aren't familiar with penetration testing, do you have a nice little definition that you like to say at the dinner table to explain to your family what penetration testing is?
Yeah, basically, it's offensive, right? So the point is that you have an environment, and unless you actually attack that environment, how do you know if it's secure or not? So you have to actually try to get it. So think about like your house, right? Like I can buy like the fanciest locks in the world for my front door, but if I leave the window right open, they're just going to walk right in the window. And I don't know that unless I try to get into the house. So that's what we're doing. We're trying to get into the house.
It reminds me of this photo that I saw on the internet where there's a gate across a walkway, but then the person kind of steps back and the gate is only covering the walkway, and there's a big piece of lawn just like right to the right. It's like there's no fence. It's like,
Yeah,
what's that even doing?
walk
Security
right
theater?
around.
Maybe.
Yep.
And so when it came to penetration testing, as we know and love it today, I remember having to do a lot of documentation. If you've been following me, audience, around a long time, you knew I used to like to kick over sand castles and do penetration testing, but there's a lot of documentation, there's a lot of manual processes, and it could take quite a long time. And so, what is Horizon 3 looking to do when it comes to assisting our offensive operators, we'll call them, in doing these sort of assessments?
Yeah. Yeah, there's actually the documentation is a big piece of it because, of course, because NodeZero is autonomous and can run on its own, all that is just going to get done automatically. So it's going to run the pen test through the entire environment. At the end, it's going to aggregate everything. You get a beautiful UI with all the data, but then you also get reports at the end. But there's even more than that because, I mean, traditional pen test is point in time. And so within a couple weeks, it's outdated. Also, you are human, Kyle. I mean, you're superhuman, but you're still human. So trying to get through thousands of endpoints in like 2 or 3 days was probably really hard, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So NodeZero can do literally like 15,000 in a day and a half and be exhaustive. And then give you the report and then do it again a week later. So it's not even like you don't have to wait 6 months. You can just
So
do it
you have
again.
like this constant posture management, if we will, for
Yeah.
those that follow the terms. So that is really cool. And you bring up a good point where, like, the point in time, yeah, you could start, but then what happens when an engineering team launches like their new version of it? It's like, well, we just did 2 weeks of penetration testing on this version, and there's a bunch of changes to where it's no longer a minor version, it's a major version. Now we got to do it again.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're doing mostly infrastructure. We're getting into the app penetration testing that's coming in first quarter of next year. But right now we're doing like the hardcore like infrastructure, all your network stuff, EDR. We're able to pen test all those configurations. And you know what we end up figuring out? We end up figuring out that the majority of things that we find are just really bad decisions that people have made. It's not even a CVE. It's not some kind of like fancy exploit. It's just Todd, the engineer, did something dumb and we're able to leverage it.
Sounds about right, but I'm gonna name the engineer Todd to Nick for non-nefarious reasons. But hey, I'm a huge visual person, and I know there's a lot that goes behind into building out this awesome functionality
Yeah.
and this tool that we're going to be talking about more. So let's go ahead and bring it up. Nick, hit the button, please.
Yeah.
All right.
Here we go.
So NodeZero. So NodeZero is the name of this autonomous penetration testing tool.
Yep, absolutely. And so this is after a pen test is completed. So we're looking at results after it's done. And you'll see on the left here, these are all the APTs and like cyber gangs. And so some tools like try to say, hey, we'll run the test from a perspective of a particular APT. And we're like, nah, we're not going to do that. We just run the entire pen test. And then when we're done, we map all the TTPs we found back to the known groups that use those TTPs, if that makes sense.
That is really cool, because I know working with a lot of organizations that, they're concerned about what is happening in the news, and you'll hear, ransom group or hacker group or, whatever's, in the headlines, like, okay, well, now we could simulate against that to our environment with the TTPs. And by the way, I have a recommendation for a APT group name called Eleanor, because that's my daughter and she's my little APT. But that's besides the point. Always DDoS and me going, daddy, 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 daddy. So you're able to simulate known APTs, which is awesome. Now, how is this kind of orchestrating that? Because to simulate an APT, I mean, these aren't just someone running a simple Python script. These are advanced groups, and the tooling that they have, that's not simple to do. Especially by you go to one person and say, hey, can you do all this? They'll probably start breaking out in cold sweats going, I can, but it's going to take a long time.
Yeah, exactly. And so let's follow the path a little, and I think you'll see it because it gets pretty cool here. So first of all, let's look at Volt Typhoon here. This is a Chinese APT. And right here we see the this password and AD attribute. I remember back when I used to work for an MSP way back in the day. I used to be tier 1. And the old guys would tell me, hey, in this Active Directory environment, they'd be like, hey, on the services, just put the password in the metadata for the user. Nobody can see that but us, domain
Easy
admins.
Password recovery.
Yeah, right. You can just go get it out of the metadata. Well, guess what? Bloodhound can just rip it. You don't even need creds, and you can rip that metadata straight out. So that's what I was saying earlier. That's not a CVE. That's just a really bad decision that somebody made.
It's a configuration problem. And, again, supporting lots of people when it comes to threat detection and incident response, we want to focus on what is the big, the grand, but realistically, a lot of it comes down to simple misconfigurations, like passwords in files, passwords in plain text, like as an attribute in Active Directory, or like your identity provider, or a misconfiguration for security groups that permit the whole entire internet to access sensitive ports and protocols. So
yeah. And by the way, before I go any further, the platform runs on AWS. We're in several regions. We're in the marketplace for AWS. What made me think of it is you were talking about, finding passwords and things in files. That is an area where we've added LLMs to help us now. We call it advanced data pilfering, and we're using Bedrock to help us be able to look at files and be able to see if people, because regex can't find everything. Regex is great, but there are lots of things that an LLM can look at the file and pull that password right out, and the regex would never find it.
And let's be honest, like nowadays, I use Bedrock to help me come up with like a regex pattern anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
I know there's some folks watching going, Kyle, you're such a noob. You can't do regex off the top of your head. No, I can't.
I don't need to anymore.
I barely passed math, all right?
Yeah.
Leave me alone. So advanced data pilfering. I love that term.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what we've got going on here's this attack path. And what's super cool about NodeZero, and again, I would ask you as an old pen tester kind of guy, like, look, you got 3 different paths here. They kind of converge at different points, but up here is a NFS share, and we found some creds in it. There's also an SMB credential. Oh, the SMB credential we found in the NFS share. That's kind of funny, actually. And then we just log in, which, by the way, that's what we find most of the time. Most of the time, hackers just log in. They don't have to break in. They just find things laying around and get in.
Because realistically, I mean, in the state of entropy you know, there's the famous comic correct horse battery staple. Instead of having like, leet speak as a password where it's like L337355 leet. I don't even know what I just spelled. But those, if you were to grab that and then throw it against, some sort of way to break a password through like a hash, that's going to be more simple than trying to crack something that's like correct horse battery staple because of entropy.
Yeah.
If I lost you, it's actually a really interesting read about entropy and passwords. But yeah, find the low hanging fruit
Yeah.
because
Oh,
they will
and,
be
and
there.
and by the way, we have hash cracking rigs on AWS, and we just got done converting them to a big auto scaling system. So now that we've got these Hashcat rigs, and depending on the load from all of our different customers, we just auto scale the Hashcat rigs. It's wild, and they'll just blow up and just keep going. And of course, we've already got like billions and billions of hashes in our dictionary already. But it's wild to watch that auto scaling just go up, and then when it's demand is down, it just kind of scales right back down. It's really nice.
Yeah. So how are like foundational models or LLMs supporting the analysis in like HVT, which I don't think we covered, high value target, I'm assuming?
Yeah, high value target. So same thing. So it's very similar to that advanced data pilfering. So advanced data pilfering, the LLM's looking at files and and it's matching rules and using Bedrock to be able to look at those things and see it. For the high value targeting, it's the same thing. You've got the LLM is looking at the hosts and looking at, it's like, okay, I have an Active Directory system. Oh, we went and looked at LinkedIn and we found out who the CEO is. Oh, we know what the industry is. Oh, I see the SQL server. Oh, that means that this industry, this thing, this username, this SQL server is high value. This person is a, CFO. So the LLM is able to look at that kind of context and make very quick, decisions and be able to figure that out. And so that really helps us to be able to find the high value target. And in the past, when we were just using the old school AI, uh, NodeZero was real methodical. It would just like march through enumeration and march through everything. But now it's more like a queue. So now, because of it being able to, rank services and rank users, it can move those up in the queue and make them a much higher priority earlier in the op, and make sure that we're trying to, pop those guys early.
Well, that's really cool. Now, we've talked about in brief, how this is going to be like analyzing an environment and using foundational models to kind of help queue up based on what I'm going to say is like contextual priority because of what this thing is and high value targets. What improvements have like your customers seen in testing like more frequently because it is automated for them and like time to mitigation? Because that's
Yeah.
very important. Like, okay, great, we have these issues, but what do we do now? Like, how
Yeah.
can we fix these like quick?
Yeah. So the cool thing is, and by the way, this was Volt Typhoon. This was the thing. We popped them. Enough said. They got popped. So we have like a whole vulnerability management hub with all the things that we find. And the cool thing is you get a vulnerability scanner and it comes back with like 10,000 things it found in your environment. With us, we're only going to show you the stuff that we actually popped. If we didn't leverage it or pop it, we don't show it to you. So you only see the things that were actually exploitable or leveraged. And then you can decide here. You can look at, there's things like downstream impact here where you can completely like find your biggest offenders and start fixing them. And then when you see this like one click verify right here, I can click that after somebody fixes it, by the way. Hopefully somebody has remediated this. And then I can click on it, go up here to take action, and I can queue up a bunch of these one click verifies. And NodeZero will only run against that. No, it doesn't need to enumerate again. It doesn't need to do everything. It literally just goes to that one thing and tests it, and boom,
Because
you
I
know if
think
it's done or not.
that is the other thing that, we constantly hear about. Okay, how do we validate that
Yeah,
the fix has been done? Like
yeah,
a team can report that they fixed it, great. Trust and verify. And instead of having to rerun the whole shebang, you're able to just like, okay, this has been impacting us and they fixed it. So let's go ahead and validate that.
yeah.
Because this could also be used for risk reporting or even maybe like some auditing for
Oh yeah, you got a
those.
full
So I
paper
mean,
trail now.
Yeah, you have a full paper trail, and I mentioned documentation is not my favorite thing to do. Like, yeah, it's cool, pop
Well
a
then,
shell, but then it's like, okay, now I got to write how I did it.
well then you're gonna love this. You ready? So all of our customers that have run external pen tests, as long as they opt into this service, it's called rapid response. So you opt in, and if you opt in, we know what you have on your external environment, right? And as 0 days pop out, our guys are writing proof of exploits for the 0 days that are popping out, so that you can see this FortiWeb. This is from what, early last week or sometime last week. So there was a third-party proof of concept. We began our rapid response. We added our exploit, and then a day later, it was added to the sysakev. So it was actually out there in the wild getting exploited, right? All you got to do is hit test now, and it runs a specific test just to check to see if you are vulnerable to this 0 day that's been out like less than a few days.
That's so sick.
And then you now talk about paper trail. You run this, you do the, you're vulnerable, you run the patch, you run this again. Now you're not vulnerable. You can go to your stakeholders and be like, look, we totally ran it through the paces. We applied the patch. That thing you're seeing on LinkedIn, we already took care of it.
That is awesome. Now, you mentioned that it's built on AWS. It's using Bedrock. I think one thing you mentioned, like, you have some things that are running on like scalable architecture, and I think that's another important thing to mention, because I mean, with this, you're able to scan your resources globally.
Yeah.
And I remember needing to have, I'll have friends make fun of me saying, like, I did that on 256 meg RAM laptop with like a 13-bit crystal display, Kyle. What do you mean you need a whole rig to do that? But nowadays, like, the complexity and like the sheer like footprint that an organization can have
Oh yeah.
is allowing this to be more scalable.
Yeah. Yeah, so when we run, we presume breach. So we set up a little VM inside an environment, whether that's up in the cloud using an AMI, or whether it's down, in the actual on-prem environment with a little VM. And we'll pivot into AWS. We can do cloud, we can do on-prem, we can look at all of it. And as far as the test itself, the test just runs off a little Docker container. But what happens is when you spin up an operation, that little Docker container is what's in your environment, but AWS, get ready, is the C2, basically. Because what we do is we spin up a brand new VPC for every operation, and all the horsepower spins up in the cloud, and it's acting as a C2 down to that little Docker container, just like a real attacker would. And so that's where the horsepower comes, and this guy's just kind of proxying everything. And then once the whole thing is done, we get what data we need, and then the whole thing's just gone. It just gets wiped away, which is beautiful, because now, just up and down ephemeral.
Yeah, and C2 is command and control. So think of it
Oh
as kind of
yeah,
like
yeah.
the puppet master in a comic or a very popular boy band's music video where they're dancing like marionettes. So that's what C2 is, and that is really cool. So you could do cloud, you could do on-prem. So with hybrid connectivity, where a lot of organizations do use hybrid connectivity to AWS, they're also able to do their on-prem stuff too, which is important, because like, I've seen attack paths go from like on-prem to cloud environment. And then it's like, how did that happen? Well, this is also going to provide insight to how it can happen.
Yeah. Yeah. And we even, here's another funny one that you might like. We have these things called tripwires, right? And with tripwires, the way they work, my favorite tripwire is this. We've got some there, but like, look, we put AWS creds. We sprinkle AWS creds around. So basically, if you turn on tripwires and we pop a machine, or we get to like a data source like this S3 bucket, we will drop some AWS creds in there. And that's like candy for a bad guy, right? And then what happens is when they try to use the creds, they don't work, first of all. And then we harvest all the metadata from the API call, so we know where they tried to do it from, what the source IP was, and we know what machine we assigned those creds to. And so we're actually able to use those as like a canary token, honey token thing, to bait the bad guys into trying to use it.
That's awesome. Now, because I have changed my ways of life and have gone to the threat detection incident response side, my inquisitive mind is going, what's that rapid response button?
That was the thing. That was the this was the whole
Okay,
Fortinet thing.
yes.
Yeah.
Never said I was a smart man.
Yeah.
That's so again,
this is the
from
0-day stuff.
yeah, from the threat detection point of view, that is sweet. And then you also have proactive security, or kind of like ways to get intelligence on, who's trying to poke around at our stuff with the tripwires, which I'm glad that we've gone to the terminology tripwires and not canaries, because if you think about the story and the origin of canaries, it's sad.
It is
Poor little
it's
birds.
sad.
Awesome. And then, I mean, there's so much I could talk to you about this.
Yeah.
This thing is awesome.
And by the way, we call it now, it is a offensive security platform, because I think even in the short time we've looked at this, you would agree this is far beyond classical pen testing. This has evolved into a platform for you to be able to offensively, continuously beat on your environment and figure out. Oh, and I was going to tell you that real quick. We skipped right over it. You mentioned that priority kind of thing. Here's a couple fun stories for you. So what happens is we had a customer who had a an Active Directory server that kept coming back. So they decommissioned this guy, and then they run NodeZero the next week, and all these bad things are back, all these vulnerabilities, and they're like, wait a minute, we turned that server off last week. And they went and they looked, and there was a replication job that nobody knew about. So every time they deleted it, it just came back. And how long would it have taken them to figure that out if they hadn't, run it? We've also seen where they run, there's a server, and there'll be a patch that needs to be applied. They apply the patch, they run NodeZero the next week. It's back. The weakness is back, and it says it needs patched again. And they go back to the guys and look at the ticket, and they're like, no, man, I ran that patch. I did it. I ran the patch. And they go back to the server, and you know what? They never rebooted it. And because they never rebooted the server, the patch never took effect. So it was still vulnerable. So anyway, crazy stuff like that is what we find.
That is so awesome. And hey, thank you for joining us today and showing us what Horizon 3 can do to help customers be more proactive about being offensive. Being more proactive about their security by using an offensive security platform. There we go. Got it. Nailed it. All right. Hey, stay tuned. We got more stuff coming on. See you later. Bye-bye.